The woman arrived in Durango, Colorado on a Tuesday afternoon in late August of 1878, carrying nothing but a worn leather satchel and eyes that looked like they had witnessed the end of the world. Vincent Emerson noticed her from across the dusty Main Street, standing outside the mercantile with her shoulders squared like she was ready to fight or flee at any given moment. And something about the way she held herself made his chest tighten with recognition, though they had never met. He had posted an advertisement 3 weeks prior for ranch help, someone who could handle horses and mend fences, cook if needed, and help with the general upkeep of his property 15 miles outside of town. The responses had been sparse. Most men did not want to work for the wages he could offer, and most women were not interested in the hard labor required. But this woman, whoever she was, looked like she had wrestled with harder things than fence posts and stubborn horses. Vincent crossed the street, his boots kicking up small clouds of dust with each step. The summer heat pressed down on everything, making the air shimmer above the wooden buildings. When he got closer, he could see that she was younger than he had first thought, maybe 23 or 24, with dark hair pulled back in a severe braid and skin tanned from long exposure to the sun. Her dress was practical, faded blue calico that had been mended more times than he could count. "Excuse me, miss," he said, removing his hat out of habit. "Are you looking for work?" She turned those eyes on him, and he felt the full weight of whatever haunted her. They were the color of honey in sunlight, but there was nothing sweet about the wariness in them. "Depends on the work," she said. Her voice was low, careful, like she measured every word before speaking it. "I am Vincent Emerson. I own the Double E Ranch west of here. I posted for help a few weeks back. Can you ride, handle livestock?" "I can do most anything that needs doing on a ranch," she said. "What are the sleeping arrangements?" The question caught him off guard. Most people asked about wages first, or the type of work, or how many hands he already employed. "There is a spare room in the main house," he said. "Or if you would prefer, there is a small cabin about 100 yards from the house that the previous foreman used before he moved on. It needs some fixing up, but it is sound." Something shifted in her expression, a tightening around her mouth. "Is there a barn?" "Yes, a barn and 2 smaller outbuildings." "I will sleep in the barn," she said. "If you are willing to hire me, those are my terms. I work hard, I do not steal, I do not cause trouble. But I sleep where I choose, and I choose to sleep in the barn." Vincent studied her for a long moment. He was 31 years old and had seen enough of life to know that people carried their reasons like stones in their pockets, heavy and hidden. He had his own stones. "All right," he said finally. "The barn it is. Can you start tomorrow?" "I can start today." "You have a horse?" "No." "Then ride with me. I need to pick up supplies anyway, and then we will head back to the ranch." He paused. "I did not catch your name." "Hannah Dalton," she said, and the name sounded like it cost her something to speak it aloud. They loaded supplies into the back of his wagon in relative silence. Vincent found himself stealing glances at her as they worked, noting the efficient way she moved, the care she took with the flour sacks and crates of canned goods. She was strong for her size, lifting things without complaint that would have made some men grunt with effort. When they finally climbed onto the wagon seat and headed out of town, the sun was beginning its slow descent toward the western mountains. The road to the Double E Ranch wound through scrubland and patches of pine, following a creek that ran silver in the late afternoon light. Vincent had bought the property 3 years ago with money he had saved from working cattle, drives up from Texas. The house was modest but well built, 2 stories with a wraparound porch that caught the evening breeze. The barn was larger than the house, which made sense for a working ranch. "How much land do you run?" Hannah asked, breaking the silence that had stretched between them for the better part of an hour. About 800 acres of deeded land, and I have grazing rights on another 1,000 acres of government land. I run about 200 head of cattle, mostly Herefords, and I have a dozen horses, some for working and some I am training to sell. She nodded, taking in the landscape with an assessing eye. How many hands? Just me right now. I had a foreman and 2 ranch hands, but they moved on to work for a bigger outfit up north. Better pay, more opportunity. Cannot blame them for that. So you are looking for help with everything. That is about the size of it. I can pay $30 a month plus room and board. The room and board part will be different for you, I suppose, given your preference, but you will eat at the house. I am not much of a cook, but I manage. I can cook, Hannah said, and I can manage the household tasks if needed. I do not mind hard work. They arrived at the ranch as the sun was painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Vincent showed her around the property, pointing out the main house, the barn, the corral where he kept the horses, and the various outbuildings. Hannah took it all in with that same careful attention, asking practical questions about water sources and where the cattle grazed and how far it was to the nearest neighbors. When they reached the barn, she walked inside and looked around with something like relief crossing her face. It was a good barn, sturdy and well-maintained, with stalls for the horses on one side and a loft above where hay was stored. There was a small tack room in the back corner. I will sleep there, she said, pointing to the loft. It will be cold come winter, Vincent said. I will manage. He did not push. Instead, he helped her carry up an old mattress from one of the outbuildings, along with some blankets and a pillow. She arranged them in the far corner of the loft, near a small window that looked out over the eastern pasture. When she was satisfied with the arrangement, she came back down the ladder and faced him. "What do you want me to start with tomorrow?" she asked. "We can begin with the horses. I need to check the fence line in the northern pasture, and it would help to have a second rider. After that, there is always something that needs doing. Are you really all right sleeping up there?" "I am more than all right," she said, and for the first time he saw something other than wariness in her eyes. It might have been gratitude, though it was hard to tell in the fading light. Vincent left her to settle in and walked back to the main house, his mind turning over the strangeness of the arrangement. He had hired plenty of people over the years, men mostly, and never once had any of them requested to sleep in the barn when there were perfectly good beds available. But Hannah Dalton had spoken with such quiet certainty that he knew there was no negotiating on that point. She needed to sleep in the barn the way some people needed to breathe. That night, as he lay in his own bed in the main house, he found himself wondering what had happened to her. The way she held herself, always ready, always watching, spoke of violence or fear or both. The West was full of people running from something, and he knew better than to pry. But still, he wondered. The next morning, he woke before dawn, as was his habit, and found Hannah already in the barn, grooming one of the horses with steady, practiced strokes. She had changed into men's trousers and a simple work shirt, her hair still in that severe braid down her back. "Good morning," he said, and she turned, nodded once. "Morning. I already fed the horses and checked their hooves. The bay mare in the third stall needs new shoes soon." Vincent raised his eyebrows. "You have been busy. No point in wasting daylight." They rode out together after a quick breakfast of coffee and biscuits that Hannah had made while he was washing up. The biscuits were better than anything he had managed to produce in his kitchen, light and flaky and still warm from the oven. As they rode north toward the fence line, Vincent found himself relaxing into the rhythm of the work, the familiar pattern of checking posts and wire, making note of what needed repair. Hannah rode well, sitting easy in the saddle on a steady buckskin gelding. She did not talk much, but when she did speak, it was to point out something practical. A section of fence that was sagging, tracks that might be from a mountain lion, a stand of trees where they could water the horses. Vincent appreciated the efficiency of it, the lack of unnecessary chatter. They worked through the morning and into the afternoon, repairing what they could and making a list of supplies they would need for the bigger jobs. By the time they headed back to the ranch, the sun was high and hot, and both of them were dusty and tired. "You are good with the work," Vincent said as they unsaddled the horses in the barn. "Better than some men I have hired who claim to be experienced ranch hands." Hannah shrugged. "I grew up on a ranch in Kansas. My father raised cattle and horses. I learned young." It was the most personal information she had volunteered, and Vincent did not press for more. "Well, I am grateful you answered my advertisement. This place is too much for one person to manage alone." She glanced at him, something unreadable in her expression. "Why do you run it alone?" "A man with a ranch like this, you should have a wife, a family." The question was direct, almost blunt, but Vincent did not take offense. "I was engaged once," he said. 5 years ago. She died of fever 2 weeks before the wedding." "I am sorry," Hannah said, and the words sounded genuine. "It was a long time ago. I thought about marrying again, but I never found the right person, I suppose. The ranch keeps me busy enough." He paused. "What about you? Do you have family?" The shutters came down over her eyes immediately, that wariness returning like a physical wall. "No," she said flatly. "No family." Vincent knew he had pushed too far, but before he could apologize, Hannah turned and walked away, heading back up to the loft where she had made her temporary home. He stood there in the dimness of the barn, cursing himself for his thoughtlessness, and resolved to be more careful in the future. The days fell into a pattern after that. They worked together from sunup to sundown, maintaining the ranch, tending the cattle and horses, fixing what was broken and building what was needed. Hannah proved to be as capable as she had claimed, handling every task with quiet competence. She could rope a steer, mend a saddle, dig a post hole, and cook a meal that actually tasted good. Vincent found himself relying on her more and more, not just for the work but for the companionship, sparse as it was. She still slept in the barn every night, and Vincent stopped questioning it. Sometimes, in the early morning when he went out to start the day's chores, he would see her already awake, sitting in the loft window with her knees drawn up, watching the sunrise. There was something almost peaceful about those moments, a stillness that seemed at odds with the tension she carried the rest of the time. 3 weeks after Hannah arrived, they rode into Durango together to pick up supplies and sell some of the horses Vincent had finished training. It was a Saturday, and the town was busy with ranchers and miners and families doing their weekly shopping. As they walked down the main street toward the livery, a man stepped out of the saloon and nearly collided with Hannah. "Watch where you are going," the man said, his words slurred with drink. He was big, heavy-set, with a thick beard and mean eyes. "Excuse me," Hannah said quietly, trying to step around him, but the man grabbed her arm, his fingers digging in. "I said watch where you are going. You should apologize." The change in Hannah was instantaneous and terrifying. She went rigid, her face draining of color, and her free hand dropped to her side where Vincent suddenly realized she had a knife sheathed at her belt. Before he could react, she had twisted out of the man's grip with a movement so fast and violent that the drunk stumbled backward. "Do not touch me," Hannah said, and her voice was low and deadly. "Ever." The man started to lunge forward, anger replacing surprise on his face, but Vincent stepped between them. "She said do not touch her. I suggest you move along." "Who the hell are you?" the man demanded. "Someone who does not want trouble. Go sleep it off." For a moment, it looked like the situation might escalate into violence, but the town sheriff appeared from across the street, a tall man with a star on his vest and a no-nonsense expression. "Is there a problem here?" "No problem," Vincent said quickly. "Just a misunderstanding." The sheriff looked at the drunk, at Hannah's pale face and defensive posture, and at Vincent standing between them. "Jake, get yourself home. You are drunk again, and I am tired of dealing with you." The man called Jake muttered something under his breath but shuffled off down the street. The sheriff tipped his hat to Hannah and Vincent and continued on his rounds. Only then did Vincent see Hannah's hand shaking, the knife still unsheathed at her side. "Hannah," he said gently. "It is all right. He is gone." She looked at him, but her eyes were seeing something else somewhere else. It took her a long moment to come back to herself, and when she did, she sheathed the knife and walked away quickly, heading for the livery where they had left the horses. Vincent found her there a few minutes later, standing in an empty stall with her forehead pressed against the wooden wall, her breathing rapid and shallow. He approached carefully, the way he would approach a spooked horse. "Hannah, what happened to you?" he asked softly. "I cannot talk about it," she said, her voice muffled against the wood. "I cannot." "All right. That is all right. You do not have to talk about anything you do not want to." She turned to face him then, and he saw tears tracking down her dusty cheeks. "I am sorry. I know I overreacted. I just cannot stand to be grabbed like that. I cannot stand it. You have nothing to apologize for. That man was drunk and rude, and you had every right to defend yourself." Vincent wanted to reach out to offer comfort, but he sensed that touching her right now would only make things worse. "Take your time. I will finish the business in town and we can head back whenever you are ready." She nodded, wiping at her eyes with the back of her hand. "Thank you." "For what?" "For not asking questions, for not pushing." "Everyone has a right to their past," Vincent said. "You will share it if and when you want to. Until then, it is yours alone." The ride back to the ranch was quiet, but it was a different kind of quiet than before. Something had shifted between them, some understanding reached without words. When they arrived home, Hannah went straight to the barn as always, but before she climbed up to the loft, she turned and looked at Vincent. "My husband used to grab me like that," she said. "Among other things. He was a violent man, and I stayed too long, thinking I could change him or that things would get better. They did not get better. They got worse until one night he came home drunk and angry, and I knew if I did not leave, he would kill me. So I left. I took nothing but the clothes on my back and whatever money I had hidden away, and I ran. That was 2 years ago." Vincent felt anger rise in his chest, hot and fierce, directed at a man he had never met. "Where is he now?" "Dead. He got into a fight in a saloon 6 months after I left. Someone shot him. I only found out because his brother tracked me down to tell me, to blame me, to say it was my fault for leaving. But I did not go back. I would never go back." "You should not go back. You did the right thing leaving." "I know, but it does not make it easier. I cannot sleep inside anymore. 4 walls feel like a trap. Every closed door feels like it is going to lock me in. In the barn, I can see the sky through the loft window. I can see a way out. It helps me breathe." "Then you sleep in the barn for as long as you need to," Vincent said. "And if anyone ever lays a hand on you like that again, they will answer to me." Hannah's expression softened just a fraction. "You are a good man, Vincent Emerson. I try to be." After that conversation, things changed again. Hannah began to talk more, to share small pieces of herself that she had kept hidden before. She told him about growing up in Kansas, about her mother who had died when she was 12, about learning to ride before she could properly walk. She told him about her husband, not in detail but in broad strokes, enough for Vincent to understand the depth of what she had survived. In return, Vincent shared his own stories. He told her about his fiancée, Sarah, and how losing her had nearly broken him. He told her about growing up in Missouri, about his parents who had died in a house fire when he was 20, about the years he had spent working cattle drives to save money for his own ranch. They talked while they worked, while they ate meals together at the rough-hewn table in the kitchen, while they sat on the porch in the evenings watching the sun set over the mountains. Autumn came to Colorado with a riot of color, the aspens turning gold and the scrub oak going red. The nights grew colder, and Vincent started to worry about Hannah sleeping in the barn. But when he mentioned it, she assured him she had enough blankets, and that the cold did not bother her as much as being trapped inside wood. One evening in late September, as they were finishing up the day's work, a rider appeared on the eastern trail. Vincent did not recognize the man, but he rode like he was in a hurry, kicking up dust as he approached the ranch. Hannah tensed immediately, her hand going to the knife at her belt. The rider pulled up in front of the barn, and Vincent saw that he was young, probably no more than 20, with a face that was pale and strained. "Are you Vincent Emerson?" the rider asked. "I am. What can I do for you? My name is Thomas Garrett. My father owns the ranch 5 miles east of here. We have got trouble. Someone cut our fence line and ran off about 50 head of cattle. Pa is gathering men to go after them, and he sent me to ask if you would help." Vincent exchanged a glance with Hannah. Cattle rustling was not uncommon in these parts, but it was serious business. "How many men does your father have?" "4 of us from the ranch, and he has sent word to 2 other neighbors. We will be 8 or 9 men total if you come." "I will come. When are you riding out?" "First light tomorrow. I will be there." The young man nodded his thanks and rode off. Vincent turned to Hannah, who was watching him with an unreadable expression. "I will probably be gone a few days," he said. "Will you be all right here alone?" "I have been alone before," she said. "I will manage the ranch while you are gone." "I know you will. Keep the rifle in the barn with you just in case." "I always do." Vincent rode out the next morning before dawn, meeting up with the Garrett ranch hands and the other neighbors who had agreed to help. They followed the trail of the stolen cattle northwest, into rougher country where the mountains rose steep and forbidding. It took them 2 days to catch up with the rustlers, and when they did, there was a brief, violent confrontation that ended with the rustlers fleeing and leaving the cattle behind. 2 of the Garrett hands were injured, though not seriously, and Vincent took a bullet graze across his ribs that hurt like hell but was more painful than dangerous. They gathered the cattle and drove them back to the Garrett ranch, where Mr. Garrett thanked them profusely and offered to pay them for their help. Vincent refused the money, but accepted the offer of having his wound properly cleaned and bandaged before he headed home. It was late afternoon when he finally rode back onto his own land, exhausted and sore and looking forward to nothing more than a hot meal and a good night's sleep. But when he approached the barn, he found Hannah waiting for him, and the relief on her face was so stark and genuine that it stopped him in his tracks. "You are hurt," she said, seeing the way he favored his left side. "It is nothing, just a graze. Get down from that horse and let me see." Vincent dismounted, and Hannah helped him into the barn, making him sit on a bale of hay while she carefully peeled back his shirt to examine the bandage. Her hands were gentle but efficient, checking for signs of infection or bleeding. "It looks like someone already cleaned this properly," she said, "but it needs to be checked every day to make sure it does not go bad. I will be fine. You will be fine because I am going to make sure of it." She looked up at him, and he saw something in her eyes that made his breath catch. It was concern, yes, but it was more than that. It was fear, the kind of fear that came from caring about someone and realizing they could be taken away. "Hannah," he said softly. "I thought you might not come back," she said. I kept thinking about all the things that could go wrong, and I realized that I did not want you to not come back. I did not want that at all. Vincent reached out slowly, giving her time to move away if she wanted to, and touched her cheek with his fingertips. She did not flinch. Instead, she leaned into the touch just slightly and closed her eyes. "I am here," he said. "I am all right. I know, I can see that now." She opened her eyes and looked at him. "Vincent, I need to tell you something. These past 2 months working with you, living here, it has been the first time in years that I have felt safe. And more than that, I have felt happy. I did not think I could feel that way again." "I feel the same way," Vincent said, his heart beating hard in his chest. "I did not realize how lonely I was until you arrived. You have brought life back to this place and to me." "I am afraid," Hannah said. "I am afraid of what I feel for you because the last time I cared about someone, it nearly destroyed me. I am not him. I would never hurt you the way he did." "I know that. My head knows that, but my heart is slower to trust." Vincent dropped his hand from her face, not wanting to push, but Hannah caught his wrist. "Do not pull away, please. I want this. I want to try. I just need you to be patient with me." "I have all the time in the world," Vincent said. She leaned forward then, slowly, and pressed her lips to his in a kiss that was tentative and sweet and full of promise. Vincent kissed her back carefully, keeping his movements gentle, letting her set the pace. When she pulled away, she was smiling, a real smile that lit up her whole face. "Stay out here with me tonight," she said. "In the barn. I am not ready for the house yet, but I want you near me." "Are you sure?" "I am sure." They made a bed of blankets in the loft, near the window where Hannah usually slept. Vincent lay on his back, mindful of his injured ribs, and Hannah curled up beside him, her head resting on his shoulder. Through the window, they could see the stars scattered across the night sky like diamonds on black velvet. "I used to be afraid of the dark," Hannah said quietly. "After everything that happened, the dark felt full of threats. But here with you it just feels peaceful." "You are safe here," Vincent said. "I will make sure of that. I know." They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other's warmth. And when Vincent woke in the morning with the sun streaming through the loft window and Hannah still sleeping peacefully beside him, he felt something settle in his chest. It was hope, he realized. Hope for a future he had stopped believing in. The weeks that followed were a delicate dance of growing closer while respecting the boundaries Hannah needed. They worked together during the day, ate meals together, sat together in the evenings talking or simply enjoying the companionable silence. At night, they slept in the loft, sometimes just holding each other, sometimes sharing kisses that grew deeper and more passionate as Hannah's trust in him grew. Vincent was careful to always let her initiate physical contact, to never grab or surprise her, to always ask before touching. It required patience, but he found he did not mind. Every smile she gave him, every time she reached for his hand or leaned into his embrace, felt like a gift hard-won and precious. Winter came early that year, with the first snow falling in mid-October. Vincent worried about the cold in the barn, but Hannah insisted she was fine, piling on extra blankets and wearing layers of clothing. He brought a small cast iron stove up to the loft and installed it carefully, making sure the chimney pipe vented properly through the roof. The heat it provided was modest but made a difference on the coldest nights. One evening in late November, as they sat together near the stove watching the snow fall outside the loft window, Hannah turned to Vincent with a serious expression. "I want to try sleeping in the house," she said. "Not permanently, not yet, but I want to try with you." "Are you sure?" Vincent asked. "I think it is time. I have been feeling safer and I want to push myself a little, but I need you there with me. I do not think I can do it alone. Then we will do it together." They walked to the house through the snow. their breath fogging in the cold air. Inside, Vincent had kept a fire going in the main room, and the warmth was immediate and welcoming. He led Hannah upstairs to his bedroom, a simple space with a large bed and a window that looked out over the ranch. "We can leave the door open if that helps," Vincent said, "and the curtains, whatever you need." Hannah nodded, her face pale but determined. They prepared for bed, and when they lay down together under the thick quilts, Vincent felt her trembling slightly. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her close. "You are all right," he said softly. "I am right here, I know. I am trying to remember that." She took a deep breath, then another. "Talk to me. Tell me something, anything." So Vincent talked, telling her stories about the ranch, about his plans for the spring, about the foal that was due in March from one of his best mares. He talked until he felt her relax against him, until her breathing evened out and he realized she had fallen asleep. In the morning, Hannah woke with a start, momentarily disoriented, but when she saw Vincent beside her and the open door and the window showing the snowy landscape outside, she settled. "I did it," she said, wonder in her voice. "I slept inside." "You did," Vincent said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I am proud of you. It was not as bad as I thought it would be. Knowing you were here helped." "I will always be here," Vincent said, "for as long as you want me." Hannah looked at him for a long moment, then leaned in and kissed him, deeper and more urgent than before. "I want you," she said against his lips. "I want all of you. I am ready." They made love that morning with the winter light streaming through the window, gentle and slow and full of tenderness. Hannah cried afterward, but they were good tears, cleansing tears, and Vincent held her until they stopped. "I did not think I would ever feel whole again," Hannah said. "But with you, I do." "You were always whole," Vincent said. "You just needed time to heal." They spent the winter growing closer, navigating the transition from sleeping in the barn to sleeping in the house. Hannah still had hard days, times when the walls felt like they were closing in and she needed to go back to the barn for a night or two. Vincent never questioned it, never made her feel like she was moving backward. He understood that healing was not a straight line. When spring came and the snow melted and the land turned green again, Vincent asked Hannah to marry him. They were sitting on the porch watching the sunset, the same place they had sat so many evenings before, but this time he had a ring in his pocket, a simple gold band that had belonged to his grandmother. "Hannah Dalton," he said, taking her hand, "you have brought joy and light back into my life. You have made me believe in the future again. Will you marry me?" Hannah looked at the ring, then at Vincent, and tears filled her eyes. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will marry you." They were married in Durango in early May, with the sheriff standing as witness and the preacher's wife playing the piano. Hannah wore a dress she had sewn herself from pale blue fabric, and Vincent wore his best suit. It was a small ceremony, just the two of them and a handful of townspeople who had become friends, but it felt perfect. The wedding night was spent in the house, in their bedroom, and Hannah did not once feel the need to flee to the barn. She told Vincent later that it was because the house no longer felt like a trap. It felt like home. Life on the ranch continued, but now they were partners in every sense. They worked side by side, built the business together, and slowly added to their herd and their reputation. Vincent's horses became known throughout the region for their quality, and Hannah's skill with training them was a big part of that success. In the winter of 1879, Hannah discovered she was pregnant. The news filled them both with joy and a little bit of fear. Hannah worried about what kind of mother she would be, given everything she had been through, but Vincent reassured her that she would be wonderful. Their son was born in late summer of 1880, a healthy baby with Vincent's dark hair and Hannah's honey-colored eyes. They named him James, after Vincent's father, and from the moment Hannah held him in her arms, she knew that this was what healing truly looked like. It looked like new life, new hope, new possibilities. James was followed by a daughter 2 years later, whom they named Sarah after Vincent's first fiancée. Hannah had suggested the name, saying that the woman deserved to be remembered and honored. Then came another son, Michael, and finally another daughter, Elizabeth. The house that had once felt too big for just Vincent now rang with the sounds of children laughing and playing. Hannah proved to be a fierce and loving mother, though she had her struggles. She could not stand to hear the children crying behind closed doors, could not bear to leave them locked in their rooms for punishment no matter what they had done. Vincent understood, and they found other ways to discipline, ways that did not trigger Hannah's memories. The barn remained a part of their life, though not in the way it had been before. Sometimes, on warm summer nights, the whole family would sleep in the loft, looking up at the stars through the window and telling stories. The children loved it, thought it was a grand adventure, and Hannah would smile and hold Vincent's hand and remember the frightened woman she had been when she first arrived. Years passed, and the ranch prospered. Vincent and Hannah expanded their land, hired a few good hands to help with the work, and built a reputation for fairness and quality. They became pillars of the community, known for their generosity and their willingness to help neighbors in need. Hannah never completely lost her wariness of closed spaces or her need for escape routes. Even in their expanded house, which they had remodeled over the years, she insisted on windows that opened easily and doors that were never locked. But the fear that had once ruled her life became something smaller, something manageable, something that no longer defined her. When James was old enough to understand, Hannah told him about her first husband, about the violence she had escaped, about the hard road she had walked to find peace. She told him so that he would understand that strength looked like many things, and that asking for help was not weakness. James listened with wide eyes and hugged his mother tight, promising that he would never be like that he would be like his father instead. Vincent, listening from the doorway, felt his heart swell with pride and love for his family, for the life they had built together from broken pieces and tentative trust. In 1895, when Hannah was 40 and Vincent was 48, they stood together on the porch of their ranch house and watched their children playing in the yard. James was 15 now, already taller than his father, and learning to run the ranch. Sarah was 13, smart and quick-witted, with a love for horses that rivaled her mother's. Michael was 11, quiet and thoughtful, always reading when he could. And Elizabeth was 9, a whirlwind of energy and laughter. "We did all right, didn't we?" Hannah said, leaning into Vincent's side. "We did better than all right," Vincent said, wrapping his arm around her. "We did wonderfully." "I never thought I would have this," Hannah said. "A family, a home, a life without fear. There were times in those early days when I thought I would never sleep through the night again, never trust anyone again. And then you came along and gave me my life back." "You gave yourself your life back," Vincent said. "I just provided a safe place for you to do it." "You provided more than that. You provided love and patience and understanding. You never pushed, never demanded more than I could give. You let me heal at my own pace. Because that is what love does. It waits. It supports. It believes in the other person even when they struggle to believe in themselves." Hannah turned and kissed him, a long, sweet kiss that held 17 years of love and partnership and shared struggle. When she pulled away, she was smiling. "Do you remember that first day when I told you I would only sleep in the barn? I thought you were the strangest woman I had ever met," Vincent admitted. "But I also knew there was something special about you, something worth taking a chance on. Best chance you ever took." Best chance I ever took, Vincent confirmed. They stood there together as the sun set over the Colorado mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink and purple. The children's laughter rang out across the yard, the horses nickered in the corral, and somewhere in the distance, cattle lowed peacefully. It was an ordinary evening on the Double E Ranch, and it was perfect. As the years continued to pass, Vincent and Hannah aged together with grace. They saw their children grow and marry and start families of their own. James took over the main operations of the ranch, with Sarah helping him manage the horse training business. Michael became a teacher in Durango, and Elizabeth married a doctor and moved to Denver. The ranch house, which had once seemed too large for one lonely man, now overflowed regularly with grandchildren coming to visit, to hear stories about the old days, to learn to ride from their grandmother who still sat a horse better than anyone else in the county. Hannah never lost her habit of checking exits and keeping windows open, but it became just another quirk that her family knew and accommodated. The barn loft remained set up with blankets and pillows, and sometimes, when the grandchildren visited, Hannah would take them up there on warm nights and point out the constellations, telling them stories about the stars. On those nights, Vincent would often join them, climbing the ladder with only slightly more difficulty than he had 20 years before, and he would sit with his wife and their grandchildren and remember the first night he had slept in the loft, holding a frightened woman who was learning to trust again. In the spring of 1912, Vincent and Hannah celebrated their 37th wedding anniversary with their entire family gathered at the ranch. There were children and grandchildren everywhere, filling every room of the house, spilling out onto the porch and into the yard. A massive meal was prepared, with everyone contributing something, and tables were set up outside to accommodate everyone. As the sun began to set and the celebration wound down, Vincent took Hannah's hand and led her away from the crowd, out to the barn where their story had truly begun. They climbed up to the loft, moving slower now but still capable, and sat together by the window. 37 years, Hannah said. Sometimes it feels like yesterday that I showed up in Durango with nothing but a bag and a head full of fear. You were the bravest person I had ever met, Vincent said. You still are. I was terrified. Brave and terrified are not opposites. You can be both at the same time. Hannah leaned her head on Vincent's shoulder, looking out at the ranch they had built together. I am glad I answered your advertisement. I am glad you took a chance on a strange woman who wanted to sleep in your barn. I am glad, too. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars come out one by one, just as they had done so many times before. The sounds of their family drifted across the yard, laughter and conversation, and the clatter of dishes being cleaned. It was a good sound, a sound of life and continuity and love. Do you ever regret it? Hannah asked suddenly. Taking on someone with as much baggage as I had, Vincent turned to look at her, his weathered face serious. Not for one single second. You were not baggage, Hannah. You were a woman who had survived something terrible and was finding her way back to herself. Being part of that journey, being trusted enough to walk beside you through it, has been the greatest honor of my life. Hannah's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. I love you, Vincent Emerson. I love you too, Hannah Emerson. They stayed in the loft until the stars filled the sky, until their children came looking for them with lanterns, laughing and shaking their heads at the old couple who still preferred the barn to the comfort of the house on special nights. Vincent and Hannah lived many more years together, their love deepening with each passing season. They saw the ranch continue to prosper under James's management, saw their grandchildren grow and some of them have children of their own. They watched the world change around them, with automobiles starting to appear on the roads and electricity making its way even to rural areas. But some things remained constant. The land, the mountains, the rhythm of ranch life, and most importantly, the love between a man and a woman who had found each other when both needed it most. When Hannah finally passed away in her sleep in 1925 at the age of 70, surrounded by family, Vincent held her hand and told her one last time that she was the bravest, strongest, most beautiful person he had ever known. He told her that she had taught him what real love looked like, what real strength looked like, what it meant to truly trust another person. Hannah's last words were to thank him for giving her back her life, for showing her that walls could be safe instead of confining, that love could be gentle instead of violent, that trust was possible even after it had been shattered. Vincent lived another 3 years after Hannah died, long enough to see the ranch firmly established in the next generation, long enough to tell his grandchildren and great-grandchildren the story of how he had hired a woman who refused to sleep indoors, and how that woman had become his whole world. On the night before he died, Vincent asked to be taken out to the barn one last time. His children obliged, helping him up the ladder to the loft where so much of his life with Hannah had unfolded. They made him comfortable by the window, with blankets and pillows, and he lay there looking up at the stars. "This is where it started," he told James, who sat with him. "This is where your mother learned to trust again, where we fell in love, where we built the foundation for everything that came after." "I know, Pa," James said. "She told me the story many times." "It was a good story," Vincent said. "A good life. The best," James agreed. Vincent closed his eyes, and in his mind, he was young again, lying in the loft with Hannah curled up beside him, her head on his shoulder, the stars shining through the window. He could hear her voice, soft and wondering, talking about how peaceful the darkness felt when he was near. He could feel her warmth, her gradual trust, her growing love. He died peacefully that night, in the barn loft, under the same stars that had witnessed the beginning of his greatest love story. And if such things are possible, his spirit joined Hannah's, and together they watched over the ranch and the family they had built, the legacy of two broken people who had found wholeness in each other. The barn remained standing for generations, a monument to their story. The loft was preserved, kept much as it had been in those early days, and the family made sure to tell the story to each new generation. The story of Vincent and Hannah Emerson, of trauma and healing, of trust lost and found again, of love that persevered through fear and doubt to become something beautiful and lasting. And on quiet nights when the stars are bright and the wind whispers through the Colorado pines, some say you can still feel their presence in that loft, still watching over the land they loved, still together, still whole, still proof that even the deepest wounds can heal when given time and gentleness and love.